Hey everybody, and that is music by Deconverted Man. He also done Objective Ethics, I think, song too, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. They said that to me. They're very nice of him. Very creative guy.
Yes, yes, yes. He wrote me several songs. Um, that's my favorite though. That's my lover boy version. It says. Hey everybody, we are debating. Is the Bible the best guide for morality? We have OE, who is taking the negative, and we have JiL, rebuke and reprove, is taking the affirmative. Um, and I'm so happy that both of them showed up. I thank y'all for like coming and doing this on my channel. This is awesome. So I appreciate both of you coming. We're gonna do 30-second openings to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll go into the opening statements. So, OE, you want to start first?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Robin, of course, for hosting. I'd like to thank everybody who watches this tonight and as well as in the future. Please do like the video, subscribe to her channel. She does a great job. She's been very influential in this community, and she's a great example for all of us because she maintains friendships on both sides of the proverbial aisle. So I have a lot of respect for Robin. I'd also like to thank my opponent tonight, JiL. I don't know why he calls himself JiL. I think that means Jesus is a liar, but if that's what he wants to go by, then I'll respect that. Is that I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but I do actually think of JiL as a brother, even though I don't think I've heard him say a single thing that I actually agree with. As a human being, he deserves respect and recognition, just like every other human being does. So tonight, I'm here to destroy his arguments as best I can, but not to attack him as a human being and as a brother. So I do thank JiL, and I give him a lot of credit for actually being willing to um, come and to do this debate, because I have an open door invitation to any theist who wants to try to defend biblical morality, the global flood, and a number of other issues. And very few people will actually step up to the plate. Everybody wants to shoot their shot in the chat or the comments, and it's kind of a chicken shit way to go about things, in my opinion. If you're not willing to stand up for what you really believe in, then maybe you should keep your mouth shut. So JiL is here to defend himself, and I really respect that.
Okay, well, thanks for that intro, that 300-second intro. Um, yeah, they call me Joe. Joe stands for Jesus is Lord, and this name was given to me by an atheist, actually, because he refused to say Jesus is Lord, because only by the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, the Spirit that leads us in all truths, can you say Jesus is Lord. On my channel, I like to do one-on-ones. I like to have discussions with skeptics, and I like to answer questions and show the skeptic that the only problem with the Bible is himself trying to read it. So glad to be here, and looking forward to this debate. Thanks for having me, Robin, and thank you chat for showing up and supporting this debate.
Thank you. Thank you. Well said. Well said. Yeah, Jesus is Lord, not Jesus is liar. Missing Maud got very tore up over that too. You triggered Missing Maud. Objective Ethics. You triggered
I want to
Missing
make sure we're
Maud.
getting off on the right foot.
Okay, we're gonna do 15-minute openings right now, and Jill will be the first one. I'll take me and Daniel off the stage, and we'll be in the back so Jill can do his opening statement.
Okay, all right. Well, I just wanted to again.
No, I
Can you
did
hear me?
wrong. Yeah, I moved you instead of me.
Okay. Is my time starting, or can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you. Whenever you start
Okay.
talking, I'll start the timer.
Okay. All right. Well, tonight I want to argue something Really simple. Not merely that Christianity is meaningful when it comes to your spirit, when it comes to your soul and the afterlife, but Christian ethics has proven through the science of the social statistics, right, has proven empirically that it is effective socially. So if we want to evaluate a moral system honestly, um, we shouldn't try to cherry pick Bible verses which we don't understand, which we rip out of context, and we can't understand because we haven't been trained how to read the Bible. If we want to evaluate a moral system, honestly, we should ask, what kind of people does it produce generally? What kind of families does it create? What kind of society results when its values, when its ethics and morals are practiced, are implemented into the moral framework of that society? And when we examine the data surrounding marriage, family, stability, substance abuse, education, mental health, a remarkable pattern appears. Traditional Christian ethics consistently aligns with human flourishing. Now, some might argue this is a coincidence, or this is correlation is not causation. That's true. But traditional Christian ethics seems to be aligning with human flourishing. And now this doesn't mean that every Christian lives morally. This doesn't mean that everything that's recorded in the Bible, because the Bible is a history book. So it's like reading a newspaper and reading a religious book. Okay, so it's not to say that everything mentioned in the Bible is a moral prescription, or it's not to say that every Christian lives morally or adheres perfectly or even halfway perfectly to what the Bible teaches, prescription wise. Nor does it mean that non Christians cannot live good lives, virtuous lives. So the argument is not that Christians are perfect or that everything in the Bible is a prescription morally for Christians to behave. The argument is that Christian moral principles, the things that are actually being prescribed in Scripture for us to practice for faith and our lives, that it actually produces healthier social outcomes. And again, the metric that I'm going to use, I have no idea what my opponent's going to use, but we'll get into that later. But the metric will be the actual social sciences. Not the Bible tells me so, but the actual social sciences. Okay, at the population level. Okay, consider family stability. Christian ethics teaches sexual restraint, fidelity in marriage, the importance of raising children within a two-parent household, a biological mother and a biological father. Statistics show that that is the optimal situation for raising children. Social or social studies or social research repeatedly shows this. Children raised in stable married parent households are statistically less likely to experience poverty, incarceration, educational failure, behavioral problems, and family instability. So studies also show that there's a strong correlation between religious participation and lower rates of out of wedlock births. Um, so Christian ethics did not invent these realities arbitrarily. They reflect a moral structure that protects both children and society. So it's going to therefore promote those things, the practice of those things. Um, so modern culture, and again, we don't know what OE's moral framework is. When it comes to these types of debates, the skeptic will often point to passages that are not even prescription to make an argument for morality. But then when it's his turn to question, or when we ask, well, what are you comparing our morality to? The response is often, well, this is just the way I feel about this. So he really has no code or moral ethical standard that he's using to compare to ours. But that's okay, because Christianity, again, the social sciences, again, vindicate Christianity itself. Um, how much time do I have? Moderator. Okay, I'll just continue. Is the Bible the best for morality? The Christian immediately is required to explain what morality is, where it comes from, why evil is objectively wrong, why humans have dignity. We can answer those questions, and we don't have to remain vague. Okay. But sometimes the secular side is allowed to remain vague. And oftentimes the Christian ethic is being compared to some utopian creation that's never been tried out in real life, that's never been tested by any social statistic because it doesn't exist. Morality is social evolution. It's about empathy, and society decides without clearly grounding why any of those things are objectively binding. So the Christian is defending a complete moral ontology. God gave us a complete moral ontology, which is completely consistent within itself, never contradicting, for all time, for all people, while the seculars only can attack so-called biblical ethics. That can create an uneven debate structure, but uh, the moral issue, or the issue, is not uh, the core of philosophical issue is, can secular morality be objective? And what makes these moral objections to what he thinks he's reading in the Bible true in a secular universe, which is just made up of motion, matter and motion, energy, chemistry, evolution, the survival process. Uh, why is murder objectively wrong? Why ought anyone obey morality when it's inconvenient for them? So in many ways, the Christian ethic argues um, that we can justify objective moral duties, universal human rights, intrinsic value, and moral accountability. So that's why the Christian ethic, and again, from both a philosophical perspective and also from the social sciences, is the best for society in general, all societies, not just the United States or American society. And I'll yield the rest of my time. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That was very good. A very good opening. I'm sorry I could. I come in a minute ago to tell you how much time you had, and I was muted though. So, um, but okay. Thank you, Jill. That was good. Okay, now we're going to do OEs. You got 15 minutes. His was like 5 minutes and something short, so we can add that to the Q&A thing. Um, so we'll do this again. I'll put OE up there.
Are we doing the responses? So I'll do my opening and then we'll both go, but he'll do his response and then I'll do my response and then we'll go to cross.
Yeah, you do your opening first. Yeah, so he
Okay,
can. Yeah,
gotcha. Okay,
and
okay.
I'll get off the stage, and but like if you get down to 2 minutes, I'll come back in and jump on and tell you got 2 minutes anyway.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. And I won't worry about the call. I probably will be able to cut it short, just like Jill did. I don't know how much time I'll need, but if I'm still going and I'm running out of time, yeah, like you said, 2 minute. Give me a 2 minute warning. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so my screen's not. I guess I should check really quick. Am I up? Everybody can hear me. I assume so. I'm got my Word document open here, so hopefully everything is working good on Robin's end. So, what are we specifically talking about? Is the idea of getting our ethics and moral values that we use to form society from the book most people call the Bible. I prefer to call it what it is: instructions on how to subjugate women, or the manual on how to own slaves, or the justification of genocide. Basically, it is the guide to immorality. What you will hear from my opponent is that there are some people who think the Old Testament laws don't apply anymore. But that claim is incoherent if you actually read the Bible. And this is the primary reason that we should absolutely cannot use the Bible as a grounding for morality. It is internally inconsistent, contradictory, and incoherent. It has been used historically to justify slavery, bigotry, misogyny, and child abuse. We have 2 billion people spread over tens of thousands of different types of Christianity alone, none of whom agree with each other on or with the Jews who also use the Bible. And so this is evidence that the Bible is subject to various interpretations on morality and ethics, as well as theology. What kind of moral laws do we see in the Bible? Well, let's start with misogyny. Paul tells wives to keep busy at home and be obedient to their husbands, reference Titus 2:5. He further clarifies that wives should, in everything, submit to their husbands, reference Ephesians 5:24. We're going to talk about slavery a little bit tonight, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this topic because I've heard my opponent over the months that I've gotten to know him make some really bad apologetics about slavery. All apologetics about slavery that you hear from apologists are morally bankrupt, and it shows just how morally degenerate you have to be in order to defend this book. Anybody who would tell you that there was a good kind of slavery is morally degenerate. Owning another human being as property or putting them into debt slavery is morally reprehensible. God tells you that you can own people as property for life and pass them off as an inheritance to your children. Reference Leviticus 25:44-46. Slavery is a condition acknowledged in the Pentateuch in which a person is deprived of freedom, at least for a period of time, by being in subjugation to a master in order that the master may benefit from the labor of the slave. Slavery may be involuntary, in which case the slave is generally considered the property of the owner and as such may be bought and sold. In Pentateuchal legislation, involuntary permanent slavery applies only to non-Israelites. Slavery may also be voluntary for Israelites, such as when they agree to work for fellow Israelites for a limited period of time to pay off debts or to survive poverty or destitution. But because God allegedly brought the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt to serve him alone as master, they are forbidden to bring fellow Israelites into a condition of permanent slavery, as was the case in the rest of the ancient Near East. Permanent slavery is permitted only for a Gentile in subjugation to a Hebrew. The Israelites' identity as people redeemed from slavery has direct implications for the forms of slavery that existed in Israel and their treatment of slaves, both Gentile, chattel slaves, and Hebrew bondservants. I reference Haas 2003, page 778. So what I want to do really quickly is compare slavery in the Bible to slavery in the ancient Near East, because you hear a lot of people, and I don't know if my opponent's going to do it tonight, but I've heard him before trying to say that, oh, the slavery in the Bible, that they're practicing that good kind of slavery. Everybody else was practicing a different kind of slavery. But we're going to be looking at referencing things like the laws of Ur-Nama from 2100 BCE, the laws of Lipit Ishtar from 1900 BCE, the laws of Eshnunna, 1770 BCE, laws of Hammurabi, 1750 BCE, Middle Assyrian laws, 14th century BCE, Hittite laws, 16th to the 12th centuries BCE, and Neo-Babylonian laws, 7th century BCE. As a comparison, while many of us are more familiar with these law codes, they are certainly not the only source of legal information. This will give us a great overview on how we can actually compare the laws in the Bible with what we see in the ancient Near East and in Mesopotamia, also known as the Fertile Crescent. Debt slaves were free persons who had entered slavery by reason of debt. They were alienable, but their slavery was conditional upon the existence of the debt and would be terminated with its extinction for whatever reason. Chattel slaves were slaves who had entered slavery on any other basis and whose slavery was in theory permanent and unconditional. I cite Westbrook, 2003, page 380. Bear with me here. Through this. Sorry, I've got so much. I need to figure out what I could get through in this time. Okay, so let's just go on to children. Cases of children being sold into slavery. However, the fact that parents sold young girls into conditional slavery, Exodus 21, chapter 21, verse 7 through 11, that creditors seized the children of their deceased debtors, 2 Kings 4:1, and that debt-ridden farmers were forced by law to hand their sons and daughters over as slaves, Nehemiah 5:5, show that is as in the neighboring countries of Babylonia and Assyria and Palestinians, as well as Hebrews, when hard pressed, could and probably did sell their children voluntarily into servitude. That's from Mendelssohn, 1978, page 10. But I would actually argue, and experts are in agreement with me, that many of the laws regarding slavery were actually much kinder from neighboring cultures and neighboring societies, much kinder than the Hebrew laws were. So, for example, in the laws of Hammurabi, Law 117 stipulates that a debt slave had a right to release after 3 years of service compared to release after 6 years in the Hebrew Bible. Law 117 of the Code of Hammurabi specifically states, if an obligation is outstanding against a man and he sells or gives into debt service his wife, his son, or his daughter, they shall perform service in the house of their buyer or of one of who holds them in debt service for 3 years. Their release shall be secured in the 4th year. In laws 170 through 171, if a man took a slave as a wife, laws 170 and 171 gave rights to the slave wife, providing her with freedom following the death of her master, including the right to continue to live in the estate and perhaps even an equal portion of the master's property after his death. I want to look at the fact that if my opponent says, well, these slaves it was good slavery because slaves actually had rights. Rights for slaves were actually common all throughout the ancient Near East. So there's nothing spectacular about saying that slaves got rights, so therefore that makes it somehow okay. There's nothing okay with owning another human being as property. We see, therefore, that the protection of resident foreigners and slaves was a common theme in the ancient Near East, and its presence in the laws found in Mesopotamia, Ugarit, and the Hebrew Bible should come as no surprise to us. This would have been part of the common legal tradition of the region. And also another argument that I hear from my opponent in other conversations, I don't know if he'll bring it up tonight, but I want to jump on it right now, is he's talked about agency, that when someone sells their daughter into slavery or to be betrothed to another man as a concubine or a sex slave, that she was an agent in this transaction. That is false. Even with this form of protection contained in the law, one can easily argue this would be considered grossly immoral by today's standards. Selling one's daughter into slavery, concubinage, or marriage, while better than general slavery, would by no means be acceptable today. In response, some, like my opponent tonight, have argued that the female slave was an agent in this transaction and that she actively chose to enter into relationship. The Hebrew of Exodus 21:7, however, is clear and straightforward. The father sells his daughter. No agency is ascribed to the daughter. Well, verse 8 can be more complex if you use the Greek. That might seem to indicate to some that the daughter has chosen to go with her master. The Greek word kathomologaseto is an aorist middle indicative, is translated by some in verse 8 as she betrothed herself. Thus, she would be an agent in the transaction, meaning that there would be no involuntary slavery present in the text. Unfortunately, there are several problems with this interpretation. First, the grammar of verse 8 does not seem to allow for the daughter to be the agent, as the relative pronoun hen, which refers to the daughter, is in the accusative case. She is not the subject of the verb. Muraoka writes concerning this verse, and that's in 2009, page 351. In his book, the aor mid is to promise to give in marriage. The subject is the father, and the accused person is the daughter, whom he, the girl's father, had betrothed to him, Exodus 21:8 and 21:9. More simply, what Marioka is saying is that the verb has the father as the subject the daughter as the object and the master as the person to whom the daughter is being betrothed. Thus, he translates this, whom the girl's father had betrothed to him. Prop in 2006, page 196 writes, in 21:7, the subject is the girl's father, not her purchaser. Exodus stresses rather the woman's passivity subject to the authority of first of her father and then of her purchaser. Finally, he states with the LXS Aquileus Somaticus Theodosian, that's that's the Greek, of course, the Septuagint. I take the verb ya'ad as meaning to make a commitment, in this case, to elevate the maidservant into a concubine or wife. That is, the verb refers to the action of her guardian, who has the right to bestow her on whom he pleases. This includes the option of marrying her himself. So we see that agency is actually ascribed to the person who's in authority. So when something is said to be willing, the willingness is actually the person who has agency. The daughter, the child, has no agency in these transactions. So that is complete gaslighting when they say that, oh, well, they went of their own volition, because there are indications in the text, if you close one eye and squint really hard out of the other eye, that maybe she was a participating factor. No, she is the object, not the subject. And the prop, Marioko and Henderson make that very clear. What can you do with your slave? Well, you get context. That's how you find out how these people are being treated, right? And it's very important to understand the difference of the treatment, because we talk about in Leviticus, he specifically says that you cannot rule over or to treat your fellow Israelites as slaves. The author of Leviticus makes a distinct difference in the treatment between how you're to treat your if one of your countrymen, this is chapter 25, verse 39 in Leviticus, if one of your countrymen becomes poor among you and you sells himself to you, do not make him work as a slave. He is to be treated as a hired worker or a temporary resident among you. He is to work for you until the year of Jubilee. Then he and his children are to be released and will go back to his own clan and to the property of his forefathers. Because the Israelites are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt, they must not be sold as slaves. Gives you a distinction between slaves and bondservants. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born into your country. They will become your property. You can will them to your children. Am I down to 2 minutes?
2 minutes, yes.
Okay, so beating your slave, if you want to beat your slave to death, all you need to do is make sure they don't die within the first 48 hours. Reference Exodus 21:20 through 21. Slaves, according to Paul, the most prolific New Testament writer, did not do anything to release this moral edict that we shouldn't be owning slaves. He actually doubles down on this by telling slaves to obey their masters with a sincere heart, just as they would obey Christ. Reference Ephesians 6:5. He also tells slaves to obey their masters with fear and trembling. Reference Colossians 3:22. Sexual assault. God tells virgin women that if a man sexually assaults her, then she must marry the man who violated her. Reference Deuteronomy 22:28 through 29. God also sends Absalom to sexually assault 10 of David's wives in public for everyone to view as some kind of spectacle. Reference 2 Samuel 16:8 through 23. Stoning children. Jesus condemns the Pharisees for not stoning their disobedient children according to the Mosaic law. Reference Mark 7:6-13. Matthew 7:6-13 and Mark 7:8 through 13. And the law is in Leviticus 29. Murder of children and sexual assault to women. God says he will send the Medes to execute the anger of the Lord by destroying Babylon, killing all the children and raping the women. Reference Isaiah 13:1 through 17. And complete genocide. God tells King Saul to kill all the Amalekites, including women and children. Reference 1 Samuel 15:2 through 3. And of course, we can't forget the global flood where God wipes everybody out. God has said these laws are permanent. I'm going to skip down here. I'm running out of time. We cannot use something as incoherent and contradictory and open to interpretation as the Guide to Immorality, or the book my opponent tonight knows as the Bible, to form a society. The very notion is as nonsensical as it is horrific. It is a secular movement beginning in the 15th century CE, known as the Age of Enlightenment, that has led to the abolition of slavery and increases in women's rights, as well as community support and equal, equitable, and lawful representation for marginalized communities. Christians love to postulate that Christianity led to the abolition of slavery because Christians took part. That's ridiculous. We know we could trace that all the way from Cyrus the Great through the Enlightenment. And modern slavery in the Common Era was first abolished during the Enlightenment as a result of a secular movement towards a more humanist approach. Christians were still involved in the North Atlantic slave trade when non-Christian nations were creating laws to abolish slavery. Slavery has since been abolished globally, and Christianity is not even remotely responsible for non-Christian nations' abolishment of slavery. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I'm going to go close there.
Thank you, OE. I'm gonna bring Jill back up here. All right. Thank you. Um, who wants to go first on this? I didn't know which one you wanted to
I guess
do first
Jill,
on
Jill
this
goes
one.
first every round.
Oh, okay. 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 Are you ready, Jill?
Yeah, what's is this 6 minute rebuttal?
This is just a 5 minute
Oh, it's five
or
minute
six
rebuttal.
minute. Well, yeah, you can have six. It don't matter. You got
Okay.
time left over from your, but it's just a rebuttal to his opening statement for right now, and
Okay.
then he'll do one, and then we'll go into the cross
Can I
examination.
can I share my screen?
Yeah, I clicked that all guests should be able to do that. So see if it
Okay.
if not,
Let
I'll
me
do
see if
it.
I can.
And I'll get us off the stage.
Okay. All right. So we had if I were not a man of God and not and if I weren't so humble, I would call myself a prophet because we just saw what I told you we would see in my opening. We would not get any positive moral framework from Mr. OE. We would just get more of his biblical illiteracy and misunderstanding what the Bible is actually communicating. Actually, OE is making the same mistake that the masters made in the antebellum South. So he was right about, partially correct about one thing. The Bible was used to mistreat people, but misused. The same misreadings and misuse that he has displayed here in his 15-minute opening. Excuse me, which was a waste of time. Um, because he can't demonstrate a thing that he said about slavery or any of those things that are going on. He claims in the Bible. Neither can he show this prescription. It's a prescription for how we are to treat people. Um, so the positive worldview is still the Christian ethic, not whatever worldview he has that only critiques another worldview without grounding its own moral claims. So when it comes to the Bible, uh, CHI is an acronym that I just came up with because I love acronyms. And it's competence, health, and integrity. When it comes to biblical ethics, we have, again, the social sciences back us up. So we're not just critiquing another worldview from a position of where I pick and choose from other worldviews to create my own worldview. You see the difference? Drug use and substance abuse. And by the way, you pick and choose. It's eclectic, what they call, where you can choose different what you consider to be good from each religion. I'm going to take a little bit of Buddhism and I'm going to take a little bit from Christianity and I'm going to combine it and create my own moral religion, ethical standard, and then I'm going to compare that to Christianity or Islam or the social sciences say that the practices that are prescribed in the Bible. Chattel slavery is never prescribed in the scriptures, ever. Mr. O.E. can't demonstrate that. Okay, he can just blurt it out, but he can't demonstrate. When it comes to drug use and substance abuse, the Bible is clear. The ethical standard is clear. Sobriety, self control. The National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse reported that teens who rarely attend religious services, like children raised by atheists, they are significantly more likely to smoke, drink, use marijuana, and use harder drugs. And we have an ethical standard against that, to stand against that, that we can implement into our laws and society. Ephesians 5, passages like Ephesians 5, um, teach that we should not be drunk or we should not be uh, drinking to a point where we lose capacity, where we're no longer able to Be competent. Um, Also, when it comes to health, the Bible has prescriptions on how you should behave sexually when it comes to sexual behavior, relationships, and a review. And of course, the Bible has a standard: one man, one virgin woman, together forever in holy matrimony, till death do them part. That's the standard. Not to say that everyone's going to meet that standard, but that is the standard. Okay. And a review in pediatrics found that religiosity, and again, most of these surveys are general when it comes to religion, but because they're being conducted in the United States, we can safely assume that it is regarding, speaking of Christianity, not Islam or any other religion. But a review in pediatrics found that religion, being religious, correlated with delays in sexual promiscuity or activity, and it reduced risky sexual behavior among adolescents. And again, we can find in the Bible the ethical standard. We have one. We can show you it. We don't just have to criticize Islam. Islam is pretty bad, but we have a standard that we can stand on to which we can compare to Islam. Chastity before marriage and fidelity within marriage. Okay, that is the biblical ethical standard. And then when it comes to integrity, the Bible, it has a strong lean strongly towards strong families and promoting strong families and parental responsibility and honoring family, children honoring their parents, etc. So a study showed, a study in the Journal of Marriage and Family found that weekly religious attendance during childhood and growing up in a two biological parent, that means no one, we're not adopting here, not two men adopting or two women adopting, but two biological parent families is the prescription. They were both associated with significantly lower odds of non-marital first birth, or what we call out of wedlock birth, baby mama drama. Okay, so the ethical standard is strong households, parental responsibility, honoring family, etc. And we can find several passages which give you actual prescriptions from the Old and the New Testament. Um, Now,
Jill,
how much
your
time do I have? 2 minutes?
your time's up.
Oh, time's up. Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah. I gave
I'll
you.
yield.
I'll let you finish because you got the slides.
Well, I can 30 seconds, I guess, because I
Yeah, go
did.
ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. Perfect. I just wanted to briefly touch on OE's 15-minute opening where he seemed to be attacking the Bible when the Bible doesn't teach any prescription for slavery. So I just want to give him a slave or a scholar on this topic who's written several books on the ancient Near East. And he says this is J. Alec Moiter. The Hebrews had no vocabulary of slavery, only that of servanthood. And it is to be noted, this is important, that conditions were such that the first item of legislation, meaning the first thing that had to be rendered, was catered for, he says, was that the person who loved his master and did not want his freedom. So he wanted to be a part of that household, that family. Scholars call it adoption through manumission. So the Eved, or what's later translated in the English as slave, which became taboo. The word became taboo now. It only means something bad. But back then, it didn't mean something bad. So the slave, like the Abraham slave, would be an actual adopted son of the slave, quote unquote, slave master. So it's not the type of slavery. In fact, we would not even call it slavery. If someone were doing this today in our culture, there would be no ground for arresting them. because what they were doing would be perfectly legal today in our society. So when we talk about what the Bible is prescribing, again, that's one thing. When we talk about OE's not misunderstanding of what the Bible is rendering, that's another thing. When you combine those two things, he has no argument against the Bible morally as far as its ethics are concerned. And I'll yield there.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, yeah. All right, I'll remove you and I'll bring OE up. Okay, OE, you got 5 minutes as soon as you start talking. I'll get off here.
Okay, so I do appreciate that JiL actually did cite a couple of studies in that, considering he had no studies. He used the word studies and statistics, like I think I counted like 8 times at least in his opening, but didn't mention any. A couple of things. First of all, I mentioned, I think it was 6 different sources of scholars to back up what I said, as well as cited Bible verses that back up what I said. And I also have a bibliography that contains over 50 scholars that disagree with JiL in his one source. I do appreciate that JiL recognized that what I said was true about the people misusing the Bible to justify slavery. I don't think JiL realizes that in acknowledging that, he also refutes his own opening statement, because he says the thing we should do is look at what the people do with this belief. What kind of people does it produce? I believe were his exact words. And so we see what kind of people it produces. It produces bigots. It produces misogynists. It produces self-righteous people who abuse their children. He did mention another study about biological parents in the home, but I think he's misunderstanding the study, because the studies that I'm seeing from risecounseling.com, National Review, National Institute of Health, Institute for Family Studies, all of these mention 2-parent households. They say nothing about biological parents. So I'd be curious if the one study that he cited actually says they have to be biological parents, or if he's talking about 2 parents in the household. I'd also like to point out that I think it's over 85% of people that are in incarceration identify as either Christian, Jew, or Muslim in America. So the kind of people that it produces clearly is showing us what people do with when they hold these beliefs. It doesn't seem to make much of a difference. He mentioned the science of social statistics in his opening. I didn't know there was a science of social statistics, so I'm kind of curious what that actually is. He mentioned good mental health. I would counter by saying that actually there's a big problem with mental health. We see this because the similarities when people deconstruct from religion, they go through the same mental trauma as people who get freed from a cult. There's been numbers of studies done on this. In fact, there is an actual social statistic. I don't know if it's a science of social statistics that maybe JiL's referring to, but it's called RTS, which stands for Religious Trauma Syndrome. And it's what people go through mentally. It's the mental damage and the emotional damage that people go through when they realize that they've believed in something that isn't true, that they built their entire worldview around something that isn't true, and that they've been engaging in morally reprehensible behavior and justifying it by, oh, God told me to do this. It's in the Bible. Being gay is a sin. People who are gay are going to go to hell. And then they finally realize that all that's a bunch of bullshit, and that gay people are people like everybody else, and they deserve all the respect and all the same equal rights as heterosexual people, trans people, so on and so forth. Human beings are human beings. I don't think JiL knows what the difference between descriptive and prescriptive actually is. The laws that we see in the Bible are laws. They're not descriptions. They're prescriptions. Everything I mentioned and all the verses that I cited are prescriptive. They are laws. Laws are prescriptive. They're not descriptive. And I think, is there anything else from his opening I want to mention here? He says we can explain something. I can't remember what it was, but he never did explain it. That's probably my fault. I should have taken a better note. He mentioned that morality, that from the secular view, is based on empathy and social evolution. There's actually a lot of truth to that. It has nothing to do with the Bible whatsoever. He says moral ontology. Well, the ontology doesn't get you to morality because of what we're talking about here. So if the ontology of it is it's grounded in God, the first thing he would have to do is demonstrate that the God exists. Now, this isn't a debate about God's existence, but you can't claim an ontology about a magic fairy. You know, magic fairy says so, so we do it. So that is a non sequitur at this point for this debate. And he said that secular morality cannot be objective. Well, first of all, I believe, and the significant majority of philosophers also agree with me, who also the significant majority of happen to be atheists, that morality is in fact objective. And I'll be looking forward to explaining that to JiL, maybe during my cross-examination or his time to cross-examine me. I can explain to him how morality is actually objective from the secular worldview. What you cannot get is objective morality from the Christian worldview. What you get is divine command theory. So I don't think JiL knows what objective and subjective means, or he wouldn't have said that, because objective or subjective can be looked at in two ways. Either you have stance independence or mind independence. God has a stance, God has a mind. It says so in the Bible all over the place. God has a will. That gives God a stance. So therefore, God's will, God's laws are subjective. They're subjective to God's mind. The other way you could get subjective is based on facts, or objective is based on facts. So the facts of the matter would be based on the natural law of cause and effect, having nothing to do with God. So because it can be seen independently of God. We both can agree that there's nature. We don't have to both agree that there's a God behind the nature, because we both observe the nature. That's the natural world we live in. That's the world that JiL exists in every day. When he gets in his car, he goes to his job, he does whatever. He's existing and functioning in the natural world. So he cannot deny the natural world exists. So we have common ground there. I don't have to take that extra step and pretend that there's like some magical being in the sky that does crazy things and makes crazy laws, and therefore I have to live my life by that. I can just base morality on the phenomenon of cause and effect, which is where we actually get objective moral truths from. And again, I can explain this in further detail during the cross-examination time. And I think I'll go ahead and relinquish the rest of my time. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I come in here. I didn't know. I was going to give you a few extra minutes just because I know that you finish up. So I didn't. But I didn't know if you was waiting on me, because I don't know why y'all can't hear me when I talk backstage. All right, let me bring JiL up. Okay, we're gonna do 20-minute cross examination now. JiL is going to get to start the cross examination. He'll have 20 minutes to cross examine OE. OE, try to keep your answers as short as possible so you don't eat up, JiL's time. And just let each other finish your thoughts or whatever. But try to answer his questions as short as, as quickly as possible or whatever. So we'll do that both ways, so that won't eat up the person's time that's asking the questions. All right, but I'm gonna get off the thing, and as soon as JiL, you start your first question, then I will start the timer.
All right, cross exam, the best part of the debate, where OE can't just spew out claims about what the Bible says. My pastor often would say, when he was preaching in the pulpit, he would often say, if someone comes up to you and tells you that the Bible says this, just ignore them. Okay. All right. So you mentioned, OE, that the Bible was wrong about X. Um, Many X's you had. You had an X, a Y, a C, a Z, an E, and an X, and an S, and a T. But you mentioned the Bible was wrong. Where is the moral code for how one ought to behave in X situation that you're comparing the Bible to? Where is that code?
So are you asking how do we get objective morality
No, I'm
without the
not.
Bible? Is that ultimately what you're?
No,
The way
that's
you
not
phrase
what
it,
I'm asking.
how do we get? So I guess I don't know what X. How,
Yeah, but you mentioned the Bible was wrong. You said the
okay.
Bible was wrong about something or many things. Where is the moral code, the moral ethical code, or the ethical code, the standard for how one ought to behave in that situation that you said the Bible got it wrong? Where is it? Do you have it, or does it exist? What are you comparing the Bible's moral code to? What are you yourself? Where are you coming up with?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, where do I compare the Bible's moral code to? That's like, okay, I got you now. So the Bible's moral code is compared to what we see in human empathy, human behavior, how we would want to be treated if we were on the other side of the equation, so to speak. What is objectively true? So objective morality is what we'd ultimately base it on, which requires equality for all people, that all people share the same status.
You mentioned slavery was wrong. That's a
Yes,
You
owning
tried to answer
another
that.
human being is
You
property,
mentioned
or even
slavery,
debt
right? You
slavery.
mentioned
Yeah.
slavery. Where is the moral code for how one ought to behave in this situation regarding slavery? Now, when you say slavery, you mean chattel slavery, correct?
Actually, technically, all forms of slavery would be wrong, but
All
chattel
forms of
slavery in
slavery.
particular, yeah, we could focus on chattel slavery because that's the easiest one for people to understand.
Okay. So, what code do you have to stand on for how one ought to behave regarding the treatment of people or a slave, or that says slavery is wrong?
So the code, when you say code, I'm thinking codification. Codification is laws. We make the laws. So the code would be the law against slavery. Now, why do we make the laws? What's our justification for those laws? Is that what you're ultimately trying to get to?
I just wanted I just want a code book, or where are you getting this idea that where the rules are for slavery? Where are the rules for how you should treat, or that say slave trafficking is wrong? Where are they
Yeah,
found?
slavery is wrong because of the natural. It's objectively wrong because the phenomenon of cause and effect. So slavery leads to revolt. Theft leads to distrust. Murder leads to revenge. So on and so forth.
Uh-huh.
We don't determine
Okay.
this ourselves. It's just the laws of nature determine cause and effect. So there, for every action, there's a reaction.
The laws of nature.
Right.
Okay.
Laws of
Well,
physics,
it would be
ultimately.
the Geneva Convention, by the way, which sets the standards for how you are to treat people during war, and what you ought to do with survivors, and how you ought to treat them. And yes, you are to capture them according to Geneva. Um,
Well, I don't base my
but
laws, my morality on the Geneva Convention.
I know
I
you
mean,
don't. I know you don't, because you don't
okay.
have a standard. So therefore, you can move
Well, is
where
that
it
a
seems
question?
comfortable for you in your
Are you
vagueness and
asking me if I have a
obscurity.
standard? This
Uh,
is a Q and A. This is a
yeah,
process
yeah.
where you
I
ask me questions.
No,
So
I'm
ask me what the
agreeing with
standard.
you. I know you don't.
Well, you're
So
making
what
statements.
scholar?
Are you here to
Yeah,
ask
I'm
questions
asking
or
a
make
question
statements?
now. I'm asking a
Okay.
question now. What scholar did you cite, or what scholar you claim to cite a scholar that says that the Bible prescribes chattel slavery? What scholar is that? Can you provide
Yeah,
one for us?
let me get you the source for that
Yeah,
here.
sure.
Oh, grab that.
And do you have a quote from this scholar that actually
Yeah, I
is
actually read
saying
it.
that?
I'll read it again for you.
Okay, who is the
Uh,
scholar?
this scholar, we could go with Dr. Bowen for this one. I've got 50 different scholars to pull from. We'll go with Dr. Bowen here. I can't remember which one I
Of
read.
course. Yes. Let's hear it. Go ahead.
Okay, slavery is a condition acknowledged in the Pentateuch, which you know where that is, right?
Hmm.
Okay, in which a person is deprived of freedom, at least for a period of time, by being in subjugation to a master, in order that the master may benefit from the labor of the slave.
Hmm.
Slavery may be involuntary, in which case the slave is generally considered the property of the owner and as such may be bought and sold. In Pentateuchal legislation, involuntary permanent slavery applies only to non Israelites. Slavery may also be voluntary for Israelites. Now, remember, I cited another scholar describing what voluntary actually applies to the agent, not necessarily the individual person, the object, right? So the daughter, it's not her voluntary action when she gets sold into slavery. The voluntary only refers to the
Is this the quote? Is this part of the quote?
yeah, that's actually another scholar. I just want to clarify to make
Okay.
sure we're
I just
understanding
asked
the
for
vernacular here.
one. All right. So
Um,
Dr. Josh Bowen is the quote that you have. Okay.
yeah, I also have
Um,
I also cited
okay.
um,
You cited Dr.
Haas
Josh.
2008, page 778 in his work.
Okay. All right. All right. So when you cite Dr. Josh, and well, and again, I'll have to take a closer look at what he's actually saying there, because I really don't object to that, because there are scenarios today in which you are forced to work. For instance, when you are a prisoner. So my slavery challenge makes room for the Israelites having a system in which they can punish prisoners. And the way they would punish them was to force them to work and pay restitution. So yes,
Yeah, but this is chattel slavery.
so
So
you have to be
Haas
no,
2000 in Haas's
no,
work in
you can call
2003,
it
page
child. You
778, specifically says the Israelites' identity as peace people redeem them from slavery has direct implications for the forms of slavery that existed in Israel and their treatment of their slaves, both
does he
Gentile
call it
chattel
chattel?
slaves and Hebrew bond servants. So
Okay,
yeah, you had chattel slaves
Yeah, there are chattel slaves. Chattel slaves, but this isn't something that this is a prisoner is a chattel slave. You are a ward of the state. You belong to the state. So we make exceptions for prisoners
I didn't
when
say
we
anything
when
about
we when we
prisoners.
talk about even in our own constitution, but we don't call it chattel slavery today. Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't say
So
anything about
my next
prisoners.
question, my next question, if I may. Um, so when you cite Dr. Josh and you misrepresent what Dr.
That
Josh
was
is
from
actually
Haas,
saying,
2003, page
uh,
778.
okay, that's fine. But whoever you're citing, you're probably misunderstanding what they're actually communicating, in my opinion.
What are they communicating?
From what you just said. Well, you can ask me that during your cross.
All right.
So how do you then square that up against scholars who like Alec Moiter, who I cited, more conservative scholars that actually study Hebrew or Hebrew scholars, and also early Christian scholars like Wilberforce and uh, individuals who led the abolitionist movement here in America, who read the same Bible that you and apparently Dr. Josh is reading. Again, I've debated Dr. Josh, and he
This is
couldn't
Dr.
demonstrate a
Bowen. This
thing.
is Dr. Bowen, not Dr.
Yeah,
Josh.
Dr. Josh Bowen. Yeah, he couldn't
Yeah, you
demonstrate a
haven't
thing.
debated. You
Okay,
haven't debated. You haven't debated Dr.
I've
Josh
debated
Bowen,
Dr. Josh. Yes,
not
Dr. Josh
Dr.
Bowen.
No, not
Twice,
Josh
three
Bowen.
times,
You debated
four
Dr.
times actually,
Josh, not Dr. Bowen.
four times. Okay, Dr.
Dr.
Josh
Josh and
Bowen.
Dr. Bowen are two different doctors.
Dr. Josh Bowen. That's his
Okay.
first name. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So later, Atlantic slavery was often justified against Christian arguments by selective readings and misreadings of the text and thinking the word slave means chattel slave, not by any unanimous Christian teaching. That's why when we form our governments and when we form our societies, chattel slavery is not part of it because we understand abolitionists like William Wilberforce, who went to his death defending these teachings, John Wesley, many Quakers, explicitly argued that slavery contradicted Christian ethics. So, how do you square your liberal scholar reading of the Bible with them? How do you reconcile the two, if you
There's
even
two
try
ways
to?
to do it. There's two ways. First of all, you look for scholarly consensus. So, as Dan DeMayan, 1992, in his work on page 58, just as Gene Haas defines slavery above, it is the state in which someone is deprived of their freedom, subject to another individual who benefits from their labor. This state can exist temporarily or permanently. Dandamayev defines slavery in this way: slavery is the institute whereby one person can hold ownership rights over another. So there are numerous scholars. I've got a bibliography of over 50 scholars that I could cite that all agree with Dr. Josh Bowen. The other issue is you look at context. So as I read, you can beat your slaves, right? You can own your slaves permanently. You can pass your slave on, your chattel slave on as property, as an inheritance. This is so the context also tells us how we should be reading these passages. And the fact that not just a few people or a handful of people, but literally thousands of people use this Bible to justify the North Atlantic slave trade tells you that it's certainly open to interpretation.
Yeah, well, again, for every liberal hack you can cite, I can cite actual conservative scholars who are actually Hebrew scholars who could tell you otherwise, who were actually invited to the Oriental seminar where the issue of slavery was discussed in depth. Dr. Josh wasn't invited to that venue, but I want to read from one of those scholars, or a quote from him. This is from Dr. J. Schuyler, and then we'll end this discussion on slavery because again, this debate is about what the Bible actually prescribes. The Bible does not prescribe enslaving another. Okay, but here's what Dr. John Schuyler says. In English, we regularly use commercial language. Okay, this is what I was talking about, the language barrier. You're having a problem, and your liberal scholars who obviously are selling books are having a problem. Maybe they do. Maybe it's willful. Maybe it's not willful in your case, ignorance. But in English, we Regularly use commercial language to describe people when the context is commercial. For example, trading a player to another team or transferring an employee to another location. We don't use this language because we view the people involved as less than human. We use it because it accurately describes their circumstances in a given commercial context. To say that servants are property in Leviticus 25, all throughout the Bible, again, perfectly legal today. No one would be put in jail if this scenario played out in America today. Can't prove otherwise. In fact, you win the debate if you can prove otherwise. To say that servants are property or inherited is not to put them on the level of furniture or less than human any more than to say a sports star is traded puts him on the level of a stock. So, considering a more conservative view as far as the language is concerned, have you ever heard this position or argument before at all, or you just basically
Yes,
read
yes, I'm aware of this
Dr.
argument, and it
Cohen?
falls apart
Okay,
on a number of levels.
okay.
So
Where
first of
does it
all,
fall apart?
when you're talking about trading a sports player, what actually is going on here is it's a financial transaction between two sports teams, right? And the sports player
Hmm.
has the ability to opt out by not playing. They hold
Okay,
out. It's called a holdout. The slave, on the other hand, does not have the option of holding out.
okay. Can you
Okay.
demonstrate that?
Demonstrate that.
Demonstrate that the slave did not have the option to leave.
Did not have the option to leave.
Yeah, from the text.
Demonstrate that they did have the option. If you're making the positive
Yeah,
claim, that would actually be
no, you
your
made the
proof
claim, sir. You made the
because
claim
it's property. We
that
know that what
you
ownership of property means.
okay, no, but just simply saying their property is not demonstrating they did not have the right to leave. Can you demonstrate that that was one of the
It
distinctions you
is the
brought up?
definition of property that you
Property
lose your
again in the
agency. When you become
Near East.
somebody else's
Property,
property, you
property
lose your
again, sir.
agency to
Hold
that
on, hold
person.
on. Property again in the ancient Near East simply meant you had a contract to fulfill an obligation. That's not demonstrating that you're there
That's a
by
meaningless
force.
statement, an
It's not
obligation. That's
demonstrating
literally a
anything.
meaningless statement.
So again, you really don't have an argument for
No, you
slavery
haven't
being
made it. You
described in
haven't
the Bible.
actually said
Okay,
anything of any
so
value, of any substance.
uh,
It's an obligation that literally
okay,
means nothing.
okay. So all you
So
have is the word. So all you have to show me is the word property. That's it.
that property, yes,
Okay,
ownership,
great.
yeah.
Okay,
We know
great.
how those
All
words
right,
are
that's
applied,
all I
but
needed to know.
you
That's all
have
I
now
needed to know.
right
That's all I need
over
to know.
another
My
person's
next question.
actions. You can
My
relocate.
my
Chattel
next question,
specifically
please.
means
My
property that
next
can be
question.
relocated. And when you say that the property can be
My
passed on
next
as an
question, please.
inheritance, when you say
My next
property, it
question,
could be.
please.
Oh,
So the I brought up the argument that the social sciences demonstrate for what the Bible does prescribe. Again, not for what you were taught. The Bible says. Um, I brought up drug use and substance abuse and the biblical ethical standard of sobriety and self control. What does your ethical standard say about getting drunk? Is getting drunk something you would prohibit or something you would militate against or try to legislate against or try to regulate, or is that something you think should be you should be allowed to do
so objective
uninhibited?
morality respects everyone's individual autonomy. It's not my place or your place or anyone else's place to tell people how much they should or shouldn't drink in the privacy of their own home. Now, if you're out
Okay, so
in
it has to be
public,
in the
you have a
privacy of their own home.
yeah, in public, you have
Okay.
a duty to other people that you're around, right? You can't
Mhm.
set your own house on fire, even though you own your own house, because your house might catch your neighbor's house on fire. Same thing with drinking. You can drink all you want if that's what you want to do to yourself, but you cannot get into your car because you could kill somebody.
Okay. So you can drink as much as you want at home by yourself as long as you're not out in the public.
Personal autonomy. You could do whatever, any
Mhm.
consenting adult can do whatever with themselves or any other consenting adults, as long as they're not hurting other people or unnecessarily endangering other people's lives. Absolutely.
Okay. So that would be a good drunk to you. The one that does that, the one that stays inside, does not harm or go outside in the public and possibly harm someone. That would be
Good
a
or
good
bad
drunk.
or good or bad or value judgments So
Okay.
it's up to the individual person to determine if it's good or bad.
Oh, it's up to the individual person. So you don't really have a standard when it comes to whether
The
getting
standard
drunk.
is in respecting a person's personal autonomy. That's the standard. That's
Okay.
the principle.
Unless the personal autonomy takes them outside in public.
Where they are unnecessarily endangering other people, right? Exactly, because now they're affecting other people's personal autonomy.
All right. So affecting themselves and their liver is okay negatively. That's okay with you and your worldview?
What's okay is respecting their personal autonomy.
Yeah, their personal autonomy, but not themselves, personhood, not their health. You don't that's not important to you in your worldview.
Well, my worldview is completely irrelevant to the question, but I would advise people, if they're interested in taking my advice, on getting a good diet, good exercise, and good sleep.
Yeah,
But people don't have to listen to me. I can't tell them that's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, because those are value judgments, and value judgments are always going to be subjective.
yeah, you're right. Your worldview is irrelevant when it comes to this question. The Bible, however, isn't. When it comes to uh, drugs, when it comes to, I'm sorry, STDs and sexual health, the Bible's ethical standard is chastity before marriage and fidelity, meaning monogamy within marriage. And um, does your worldview have an ethical standard for a goal or a standard for which we are to a high standard, any standard for which we are to try to achieve um, concerning couples, young men and women?
Yeah, education and personal and respect, self-respect and respect for others, mutual respect. If you focus on those two things, because I would advise people, ultimately everybody wants to live a good life. The way to live a good life is to respect the planet, respect other people, and have self-respect. So if you respect yourself and you have mutual respect for others, then you want to focus on education as being the best defense against spreading STDs.
Yeah, yeah. You CNN is hiring. After the debate, maybe you can contact them. Um, that was good. I mean, you could probably run. They need some help. The Democratic Party. They're going to need some help these mid elections. But um, when it comes to STDs and sexual health, what are you educating the children about? Condoms?
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
what
You want
you? That's what you're
unprotected
doing?
sex. Unprotected sex is extremely dangerous. We know this because of
Okay.
studies on health, right?
So that's what you're doing as far as health and sexual health and education. You're going to tell them to wear a condom.
Well, I'm not a sex educator, so I'm not what I
Well,
would
not
tell
you
people
personally, but your worldview. Would that
would
be
be focusing
optimal?
on,
Would
yeah,
that
on
be
education. Yeah, education, absolutely,
education?
and to put the
Wear a
proper
condom.
resources into education and also into the health industry, so that we could create. Um, Sorry, go ahead, Robin.
Bill, your 20 minutes is up. Did you have
Okay.
any more? Did you have any more questions? I mean, like,
No, no, that not no, that was it. Thank you.
okay, okay, all right. All right, Will, it's OE's time, and Jill do the same thing. Try to keep them quiet, like, you know, try to keep them short, like, So you know the drill. You know the drill. But okay, so now we're gonna let OE cross-examine Jill, and then after this, we will have 7-minute closing statements and questions. I don't know if Hizzle's out there. I don't know. Maybe um, get a hold of a mod or something so I can get them from them if you got a question. But we're going to do an after show if you want to, so that too. But all right, I'm going to get off here.
Okay, so I would like to just ask really quickly here, Jill, do you know the difference between descriptive and prescriptive?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that in my opening.
Can you tell us what the difference is between something that's descriptive or prescriptive?
Yeah, something that is descriptive basically is just describing what happened. For instance, Lot and the issue, the situation with his daughters. Something that is prescriptive is in the imperative. And so, meaning this is something you are to do as far as faith and practice, um, not something you're instructed to do to try to escape from the Midianites, because the
Are
Midianites are
instructions
chasing you, right?
prescriptive or descriptive, though?
Or what?
Are instructions descriptive or prescriptive?
It depends on what the context is regarding the instruction. If you're in a fight and I instruct you to pick up a rock and protect yourself, that's not a prescription for how you should behave in a civil manner or in a civil
So you don't
context.
actually, it's okay. So you don't really understand description and prescription.
I don't.
Descriptive is to
But wait,
describe
wait,
the way
what
something
I don't.
is.
Okay.
Prescriptive is describe the way something can be or ought to be. It
Can
right,
be or ought to be.
right.
Okay. Which is basically what I said. It's
Can
describing,
behaviors. I'm
it's in the
sorry,
imperative, thou
regarding
shall. It's
behaviors.
ought. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Right.
if you say that you can
Isn't
pass
that what I
people,
said?
if you can pass people on or slaves on as an inheritance, that is a prescription, not a description.
It is a prescription.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just making sure we're on
Right.
the same
Yeah,
page
it
with
is a
that.
prescription.
Okay.
Right. If
Do
they
you,
want to be passed on.
okay, thank you. Do you think
Yeah.
it's a good idea to base our society on a book that is subjectively open to arbitrary prescriptions of moral and ethical behavior, which was used historically, as you have mentioned several times, to justify things like slavery, such as the North Atlantic slave trade, misogyny, such as in not allowing women to vote, child abuse, citing verses like Proverbs 13:24, those who spare the rod hate their children, but those who love them are diligent to discipline them, and even genocide, such as in the Rwanda genocide in 1994 with the Hutu-aligned Christian churches who used biblical narratives to justify dehumanizing the Tutsis. Do you think that's a good idea to base
So
societies on a book
which
that
one
has
do you
been
want me to
so
answer?
misunderstood
Which
that
one do
you
you want me to
yourself,
answer first? You want me to answer to genocide, slavery, or what was the third
just
one?
in general, the book has been used for all of those things
Sure, sure, because they were
historically.
just as biblically illiterate as you are.
Well, that's fair enough. That's fair
Yeah,
enough. So, in your
yeah.
understanding of things, but do you think it's a good idea to base our society on a book that has been that misunderstood as you yourself have acknowledged,
Uh,
as opposed to something that would
yeah.
be maybe offer a firmer foundation?
Yeah, the the fix would be to fix you and teach you how to read the Bible and to teach you that the word slave had a different meaning to people living thousands of years ago.
Well, the
It could
50
be
scholars
so
that I
that
that
would
I
be
have
the
in front of
fix,
me, and all the
not to try
scholars,
to
but
suggest the
Jill, the
Bible did
50
anything wrong.
scholars that I have right in front of me here, this bibliography, and this all the citations that I gave you, including the source and the page number,
Is this a
right, that you hand
question?
waved away, they all
Is this
disagree
a
with you
question?
about your interpretation. So, what makes your interpretation the right one?
Again, for every scholar you name, I have 50 scholars that say the exact opposite of
And
what
do
they're saying.
you think that's actually problematic?
So
If that's
there you
true, do
go.
you think that's problematic?
No, I don't. I think that's scholarship. That's liberal scholarship versus conservative scholarship.
So
That's
you
how
don't
it's
think we could
always
come up with a
been.
better foundation
That's
for
how it's always
morality?
been.
You don't think we could come up with a better foundation for
I
morality
think I did. I
that
think I did I came up
then
with a better way because I examined the scholarship and I noticed that one side is not reading what the text is actually saying, and it has to have a different approach to the text as a conservative scholar would. A conservative
I think
scholar
you're
has a
missing
different
I think you're
approach to the
missing the boat
text.
here, Jill. So what I'm asking you, and you've acknowledged thus far, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I want to make sure that we're on the same page here, out of fairness, okay? It seems to me that you have acknowledged several times that you could match scholar for scholar, that
Yes.
these things have happened in history and people were misusing the misunderstanding and are so ignorant of the Bible, but
I've
you
debated
have the
with a lot of these
solution.
scholars on this, yeah, and I've called them out in live debate,
And
just
you
like
don't think,
Dr. James
and you
White
don't
did
see how
with
this
Bart
in and of
Ehrman.
itself is problematic.
I don't, because when I see the two come together in debate, you lose every time. When I see Dr. Josh being called out in debate, when I sat Dr. Josh down in the debate and asked him straight up, show me chattel slavery in the Bible, he had nothing. He had to go
Well,
to Deuteronomy 20, where it talks about
I've already
where it
shown
talks about
chattel slavery in
where
the
where
Bible, and the
no, no,
scholars
I'm
will
showing you
agree
what the
with me.
well,
And
I'm
you're saying
telling
it's
you,
not there. They're saying
well,
it's
let me
there. I
answer.
understand you have a creative
I'm telling you what
interpretation.
happened.
I get that you have a creative interpretation and a very active imagination. What I'm asking about is If this book has been proven to be mistranslated, misunderstood, misused, and abused historically so many times to do so many terrible things
Is
and
this a
justify
question?
so many horrible things, it is that I started this with if so many times. Is that the best source that you can come up with for morality, as opposed to stepping back from the situation and saying, maybe we should do like what they've done in many countries, including
Is this a
America, where they say
question
we're
or
going
a
to
rant
separate
or what?
church
What's
from
come on,
state?
OE? Come on, let's
Do you
get
think that
the
would be a better solution, is to separate church from state, to step away from religion and use maybe a more humanistic basis, more egalitarian basis for the laws and the moral edicts that we use?
so
Did you fall out of your
when it comes
chair?
to I dropped the headset. When it comes to Dr. Josh again, um, bringing up liberal scholarship won't help you. If you want to debate the merits of your claim, I'm willing to debate you on whether or not the Bible promotes chattel slavery. But for this debate, all you're doing is just citing one side of scholarship when I have a different side, another side of scholarship saying the opposite. So
So,
where
okay,
do we
what for,
go from here?
let's let slavery set slavery aside for a minute. What about the part where the Bible says you should throw rocks at disobedient children? Is that a good idea?
The Bible does not say you should throw rocks at disobedient children.
It's something about stoning your children, right? Your disobedient children should be put
No.
to death. You haven't read that part of
What
the
is it?
Bible?
What is a child? Where are you reading that in the Bible that a child is going to be put to death? If a child is
Leviticus
put to
20,
death, if a
Leviticus
parent,
chapter 20,
well,
verse
let me
9.
answer you. Let me answer you. If a parent in the Old Testament is going to put their child to death, more than likely to give the Hebrew people the benefit of the doubt, they are not putting their children to death for throwing a temper tantrum on the floor of Walmart. More than likely, this was a unruly teenager who was a threat to the family, the
All who
livelihood.
curse the father or mother shall be put to death. Having cursed father or mother, their blood guilt is upon them. That doesn't say anything
Right.
about Walmart.
Cursing, right. Cursing your mother and your father was a serious offense. It was not like calling them
So we should
the
we should
B
throw
word.
rocks at them
Okay.
until
It's
they
not like
die.
calling them the B word, all right? And
So
child there
we
more
should
than
throw rocks
likely
at them until they
child,
die. That's insane. What about
child
sexual
there
assault?
more than
God
likely.
tells virgin
Right.
women that if a man
It could have been
sexually,
on that level as well. Could have been on
but
that level as well. Eye
what
for
about
an eye,
sexual
tooth for a
assault?
tooth.
God
It
tells
could
virgin
have
women that
right.
if a man sexually assaults her, then she must marry the man who violated her. Deuteronomy 22, 28 through 29. Is that a good law?
I'll have to take a look. That's not in the Bible. And if the Bible
Well, you just
says
said that
prescribes,
that putting kids to death wasn't in the Bible, and I read it to you.
no, it's not.
It's
No, it's not.
all who curse father or mother shall be put to death, literally, word for
Again,
word. That's
when you
Leviticus
in the
20.
Bible, are you going to let me answer your questions? In the Bible, there's something called lex talion. So you can't just isolate one verse and say, "Oh, this is the law." The law is lex talion, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. A parent would not drag their child to death for cursing at them. So if it reaches the level where they are in danger, their lives are in danger, or he has already killed someone, probably a sister or a niece, then they would bring him to the court.
Jill, it doesn't say any of that.
But
You
parents
literally just
typically do not
invented
bring their
all of that. You
children.
literally just
Parents
invented
typically
all of
parents
that.
typically
Let's
parents
get the
typically
context
do not
here.
bring their
Let's get the
children
context.
to be
No,
killed.
let's get the context.
I
If a
mean, let's
man
not
meets a
let's
virgin,
be
if a man meets a virgin who is not engaged and seizes her and lies with her, and they are discovered, the man
are
who
you
lay with
asking
her
a
shall give
question?
50 shekels. Jill, please, shall give 50 shekels of silver to the young woman's father, and she shall become his wife. Because he violated her, he shall not be permitted to divorce her as long as he lives. Do you think it's a good idea for victims of sexual assault to have to marry the person that assaulted them?
Yeah, again, you have no idea what you're reading. Um,
I'm reading the
the
Bible,
the Bible
the book
teaches
that you
that
said we
if
should base our
two
morality
can I
on.
answer the question? The Bible teaches that if two children in that passage, two young people come together and are intimate, the man or the young man is responsible to marry the
Seizes
woman.
her, it's intimate. When he seizes her, that's
Seizes her.
you define that as being intimate with
Yes,
somebody?
and in the Bible,
As two
that's
people
not
being
rape,
intimate.
sir. You interpreted that as rape. Nowhere did the Bible does it say rape there. Rape in the Bible was punished by death.
Ha.
Only if the father spares the
No,
rapist or
the rape was not
the
no sexual
rapist,
assault. Let's
then
try to
he
use
could be let go. But
try to avoid
typically,
the R word.
Typically Lex Tallions says that eye
What
for
word?
an eye, tooth for a tooth. So it was up to the father. Yes, it was up to the
No,
father, but he could be put to death.
so the woman has no agency in the situation. It's her father who gets to determine whether
The
or not it's a
family. It
crime
would be
against the
the family.
family.
The family would come to a decision. Of course, the father is the head of the family, so he would be the one to go to the magistrates, to go to the elders and say, I want him put to death. We want him put to death. Or he would say he needs to recompensate for what he has done. So, and oftentimes, and even in our culture, people are let off for doing really heinous things, and they're given mere compensation to pay or restitution to pay. That happens, but that was up to the father
But
and the
they
elders.
pay the restitution to the father. The woman then has to marry the man.
Who
I
is the
think you're
leader
missing
of
that.
the house? Who is going to take that
But
money
he's
and
not the one.
provide for his
It's not like he
family?
took it up the
What are
ass.
you talking about?
I'm
She's
talking
not.
about.
Is she going to go off and start her own business now? This is the ancient Near East, sir. You give the money to the leader of the house, and he
Yeah, it's the
is
ancient
the
Near East,
one
and
that
with
takes
the
care
advancement of
of the household.
society
So
and
of
the
course he
advancement of
gets the
society,
money,
we've
genius.
realized how
He's the
degenerate
father.
this is, and so
Fathers were
fortunately
important
people
back
don't,
then.
and
I'm
so
sorry they're
fortunately
not
people don't
important now,
engage
but
in
back
it.
then they were.
Yeah, and God couldn't come up with a better system. That's insane.
Next
That's a
question.
horrible excuse. Everybody else was doing it, so I guess it's okay. That is insane. This is supposed to
Got a
be
question?
God making this
Yeah,
prescription.
yeah. And it
Right.
makes a lot of sense that you would have to pay restitution if you were
It
spared,
only makes
if your
sense to a
life was
person who has
spared.
moral
So, what's the
degeneracy.
punishment for rape in our culture? 10 years in prison? Not death. The punishment was death in their culture.
Actually, the female can
I'll
seek
take that. I'll
damages.
take that
The
over
female
rape.
can seek damages, actually. There's criminal law and there's civil law, both to protect the victim.
And so could the female here
No, she can't. It
through
doesn't
her
say anything about
father's
her.
agency
No,
because her father is the head of the
she's
household.
forced to marry the
So
person who
no, this
assaulted
is
her, and
not
her
an
father gets paid.
individualistic society.
Her father gets paid, and she has to marry the guy
And
that
he is
assaulted
not
her.
forced to marry. That it would be up to the family. That's the family's
No,
decision.
we already went over that,
That's
that
the
she has
family's decision.
no
And
agency.
seizing, you
I've
haven't
already
demonstrated.
cited the Greek and I've cited the Hebrew to show you from
Oh boy, this
scholars.
is a
Remember in my
mess.
opening
I
statement that
told you
she
this would
has
be the
no
case, guys. I
agency.
told you.
She has
It
no
would just
agency.
be
There's nothing
OE
in the text. There's nothing in here that indicates
ranting
she has
off
any
about what he
agency
thinks the
or
Bible
this was
says.
any kind of intimacy. If you think this is intimacy, this is exactly what I'm talking about and exactly why I waste my time doing these debates, because people who claim that seizing her and lying with her is a type of intimacy, that trying to make it seem like there's some kind of consensual action here, is cope. It's really bad cope. What about genocide? When God tells people to go kill women and children, is that a good thing? Is that morally beneficial or justifiable?
Again, I'm not sure you actually know what the heck you're reading.
First Samuel chapter 15, you can start at verse 2,
Well,
where God
First
sends
Samuel.
Saul to kill
Well,
all
we
the
can
Amalekites,
again.
including the
These
women
are
and
not
children.
prescriptions. These are not prescriptions. No,
He literally tells them to do it.
Sir, can I answer your question?
Well,
This
Jill,
is
you're
a
not going to sit up
war,
here and
sir.
lie to my
Okay,
face.
okay,
No,
so you're
you're
not
not going to
going.
you're not
Okay,
going to
then
do that.
fine. Then your cross exam is over. Then,
You're not. You're
if you
literally
can't
lying.
show any
Let's
type of
read it
decorum
together.
to allow the question to be answered, and you're constantly over talking, then you lost this debate, sir. As I predicted you would.
Well, I'm sure you made that
Time for
prediction, but
closing. Time for closings.
let's look at what 1 Samuel 15 actually says.
Sure, and I'd like a question to be
Oh, I
asked.
gotta
Instead of, is this moral? Is
ask
this
you a question. Do you
moral?
think it's a good
Is
idea?
this moral after you misread the text? No, it's not immoral because you misread the text. You don't know what the heck you're reading. These
Thus says
texts are
the
not
Lord of hosts,
prescriptions.
I will. Here it is. So you can understand what we're talking about. 1 Samuel chapter 15. Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people. Now, therefore, listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish the Amalekites for what they did in opposing the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt. Now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy
Perfect.
all that they have. Do not spare
Read that
them, but kill
again.
both man, woman, child, and infant. This is
Read
a
that again for me,
prescription.
please. Read that again for me, please. Read the first
Okay,
sentence again.
thus says the Lord of hosts, I, meaning
Mhm.
I, the Lord, will punish the
Yes.
Amalekites for
Will
what
punish
they did.
who? The
The
Amalekites.
Amalekites.
This is not a prescription for how you go to war. This is something God had planned for the Amalekites.
Was
It's
it
not
morally
saying
justified?
if you
Was
go,
it
it's not
morally
saying,
justified?
can I answer you? It's not saying if you go to war, this is how
I didn't
you
ask you
conduct
if you go to
war.
war. I need you
Well,
to answer the
that's what
question
a
I'm asking.
prescription is, sir. A prescription is
Prescription
not,
for this
a
particular
prescription is not,
situation.
a
Was it
prescription
morally
is not,
justified in
a
this
prescription
specific
is not.
situation?
Can I answer your question?
You got to
A
answer the question I'm
prescription.
asking, Jill. You're
Okay, go
inventing
ahead.
a
Go ahead.
question.
Let me
Okay,
know when
is it
it's
a
my turn to
prescription
answer
for
your
in
question.
this
This is your
in
cross
this
exam.
specific situation that you said wasn't a prescription when it actually is? It's a prescription to the Israelites for how they're to treat the Amalekites in this particular situation. Go and attack the Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man, woman, child, and infant. Was that morally justified?
Okay, so a prescription is not telling you, in the case of the Japanese internment camps
I
too,
didn't talk
that
about
this
the
is,
Japanese. I don't
can
think
I
the
answer
Amalekites
your
were from
question,
Japan.
sir? Can I answer
The
your question?
Amalekites, no, you
How
don't
I want to
filibuster.
answer? I
You're
didn't cut you
filibustering.
off while you
Jill,
were
you're
answering my
filibustering. I'm
question.
asking about a specific
Well, we can just
situation
go to
involving
closing then,
people,
because you're done,
the
sir. You're done.
Amalekites, not the
You're done.
Japanese.
You're done, buddy.
Are you unwilling to engage?
You've lost your first debate.
Are you unwilling to engage?
It was fun.
These
Robert,
are yes no
we can
questions.
go to closing now because he's not allowing me to answer any of his questions during the cross. So we can just go to closing.
I mean, Jill, you're not engaging with the question. You're talking about the Japanese. I'm
Y'all were
talking
doing
about the
so good
Amalekites.
there for a minute. Yeah, y'all were doing so good.
Yeah, well, he was over talking every time I tried to answer, but we can go to closing now because he's finished. It was a
Um,
nice trial.
well, okay. OE, how many more questions did you have?
Well, it doesn't matter if Jill doesn't want to engage, and I'm not going to
I
make
do,
it.
but every time I try,
Okay.
you talk over.
All right. They're calling for me moderation. They said in chat moderation. Okay. Um, is that okay? OE, you ready to go to the final
Yeah, I respect
things?
Jill's autonomy. If he wants to go to closing statements, then I'll respect that.
I like that. I like that. Let me just say that before they do the closing statements, thank y'all both. I think y'all have both done a really good job, actually. I kind of figured it would get a little spicy. And I know that JiL um, is kind of on the hot seat right here, trying to defend biblical morality and not being able to question OEs. And so, hopefully I can get him back maybe someday and we can go over OE's moral system if that's what they want to do. So that's up to them. But
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. Yeah, I'm more than happy to discuss it with Jill or anybody else. And Jill actually had 20 minutes if he wanted to talk about my moral. Yeah, we did talk about it. He had more questions. I'm happy to answer them.
but and that'd be good. And I'd be happy to have either one of you back to do that. So it's up to y'all. But
In fact, I'd even be
okay,
willing
so
to give Jill whatever remainder time for my cross, since he's obviously not prepared to defend his position. If I'll be happy to give him my time for cross, and he can ask me whatever questions he wants for the remainder of the time, just to satisfy the audience because they came to see a debate. So I'm not afraid to defend my position on objective morality. If Jill wants to do that, I don't care. Or we can go to closing.
Well,
I'll leave it up to
you
Jill.
were afraid to hear my answer during your cross. That's for sure.
Well, I could have just reclaimed the time every time you started talking because you're not answering the question. Talking about the Japanese,
right?
I'm talking about the Amalekites.
Right.
I mean, It was fun though. It was entertaining. I'm sure the audience got a laugh out of it.
Right. Just
yeah,
like
I
when
think
I
y'all
asked
did
you about
good.
morality, you made up something that had nothing to do with what I was saying, but I allowed you to make that answer to show that you don't have an answer. But obviously, you were
We
too
didn't even
afraid to
hear
hear
Jill
my
say
answer.
"shut up, liberal" at one time. So
So can I start my closing now, and then we can go to
Yeah,
question and
Jill, go
answer
ahead,
in the
brother.
yes,
audience.
I'm gonna take me and OE off stage first. Then you have all yourself.
Okay. All right. As I predicted, ladies and gentlemen, that this would be the course that we would be going down. As in the case of all of these debates against atheists, they have nothing but conjecture. They obfuscate. Oh, look, it says slave here. Great. How did the slave get there? Oh, well, we don't know. It doesn't say, but he was a chattel slave. Why did you say he's a chattel slave? Because he's being bought. Okay. What did acquisar mean to someone living in the ancient Near East in the first century? It meant opportunity. It meant hired, according to biblical scholars who actually study the ancient Near East, not just the ancient Near East in general, like Dr. Josh Bowen, or Mesopotamian religions in general, but the specific text, the Hebrew text, because the Hebrew text makes specific changes to the culture. It says, sure, you may keep this practice, but you may not do this and you may not do this. Sure, you can have a slave, Abraham, but he's going to inherit all of your wealth if you don't have a son. Okay. So this is not chattel slavery. Chattel slaves, genius, don't inherit your wealth when you die, as Abraham or Ibrahim, Ibrahim, the slave of Abraham, who was born in the household of Abraham, meaning he was born a slave, meaning his mother and his father came to Abraham's land to work and they had children. So he was born on the plantation, quote unquote. Was he there against his will? Is that involuntary slavery? Liberal scholarship is a waste of time, ladies and gentlemen. They are a waste of your time. They are selling books, sensationalism, sophistry, the torture of scripture. Biblical illiteracy breeds, they breed biblical illiterate atheists online. You simply don't know how to read the Bible. So don't tell me what the Bible says. I know what the Bible says by how Christians act over time in history. I know what the Quran says by how people act when they get in power. They set up Sharia courts. Now you can bring up Constantine, but Constantine, we would argue, is not genuine Christianity. So we know what the difference between genuine Christianity, what led the abolitionist movements, what speaks out against all the atrocities, what spoke out against what the Third Reich in fear of their lives being taken. We know what it actually promotes because we see the results. We don't know what it promotes because Dr. Josh and some liberal scholar says so. We know what it produces. We know what it promotes by what it produces, and that's the argument from JiL tonight. So you can cite your scholar, I'll cite my scholar. Now what? Let's look at the results. And when we look at the results, the Christian ethic is superior to anyone you can think of or make up as you go. Even if you take a little bit from here and a little bit from there. Oh, you like a little bit from Islam. You like to take a little bit from Buddhism. You like the Buddha tree because you think it's marijuana growing on it. So you like to move the Buddha tree. So you take the Buddha tree from Buddha. You take the Christian compassion and you say, look, my morality is better than Christianity because look at this Bible verse here about slavery. Dun, 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 dun. So competence, health, integrity, the social sciences are on our side. If what Mr. Ethics is saying is true about the Bible and it's promoting of slavery, why is it then in the antebellum South and in the slave trade, the Atlantic slave trade, why didn't they feel the need they had to remove parts of the Bible that they allowed the slaves to read? If the Bible in of itself already promotes this horrific behavior and justifies it, why are you removing passages like "Let my people go"? Why are you removing passages like "Woe to you who does not pay their workers, their slaves, a salary"? Woe to you, says Jeremiah. Why did they remove that passage? They removed that passage because they were just like OE, only a different motive. Their motive was what? Money, wealth, prosperity, and exploitation. That was their goal. What's OE's goal? His goal is to win a debate. So he's going to provide the same perversions that his ancestors provided in the antebellum South. And I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Jill.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you very much. All right, I'll put OE up here and move us down there.
Is it my turn?
Yes, I'll soon. Let me get off here, and then you'll have 7 minutes.
7 minutes. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Jill. It was very entertaining, and I kind of thought it might be. I don't think we heard anything that we haven't heard from Jill over the months. And so he has a very creative interpretation, wild and active imagination. He thinks that when the Bible says that a man seizes a woman and takes her, that they're just holding hands and dancing through the lilies and then going to engage in some nice consensual shagging. And then afterwards, he's just going to give her father, which I don't know why he thinks he would give her father any money, considering the fact that it was supposedly consensual. And we know that the penalty for adultery is actually for the woman to be stoned to death, but he kind of forgot that part. So the guy, after having this great consensual shag, gives her father 50 shekels of silver. And in Jill's active imagination, the family has a little family meeting to discuss, should we spend this on unleavened bread or maybe a little nice vacation? No, this is insane. Absolutely ridiculous. What was that when we talk about the God of the Bible, specifically ordering Saul to kill women and children, the Amalekite women and children, Jill cannot discuss the topic at hand. He wants to talk about Japan. This is insane. He wants to talk when the Bible specifically says for parents to kill, put to death your disobedient children. And we know that putting to death in this context, if you read further in the Bible, is stoning to death, which means throwing rocks at disobedient children. Jill wants to talk about kids having a temper tantrum in Walmart. Christian apologists do not have any ground to stand on, so they obfuscate, they filibuster, they dip, they dodge, and then ultimately they quit, just like what we saw Jill do tonight. I'm not surprised. I'm sorry you guys had to see all that. But basically, what we did see Jill also admit to is that the people have been misusing this Bible throughout history. That's the one agreement that Jill and I both had. The difference between Jill and I is I think that if people can't agree on something to this extent, then they probably shouldn't be using it to base their morality on. Let's look at the damage that's been done based on this disagreement. When we look at something like the 15th and 16th century alone, less than 200 years total, the European empiricism was Christians spreading Christianity led to hundreds of millions of deaths, far more than Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and Mussolini combined. In America, we saw what they call the Great Dying, over 60 million natives, 90% of the native population. When Christopher Columbus believed his quest was a way to fulfill biblical prophecy to conquer the Holy Sepulchre, a prominent Christian site. British India, late Vatican Holocaust, conservative estimates, over 100 million deaths in India. Congo Free State, King Leopold II regime, around 15 million Congolese people. French colonialism in Algeria, over 1 million deaths of Algerians. Christian crusades, we all know about those, roughly 3 million deaths. And let's not forget about what Christians do to other Christians. The Inquisitions, also known as the French War of Religion, 4 million deaths of Catholics versus Protestants. And I could go on and on and on because we've seen this throughout history. We talked about the antebellum South and the North Atlantic slave trade. If the Bible has been unable to produce a single interpretation of ethics and morality that is in fact axiomatically true or objectively egalitarian, then it cannot be considered to be useful for anything other than encouraging and promoting the toxic behavior of us versus them and might makes right, which is exactly what we have seen historically. The Bible promotes misogyny, bigotry, separatism, divisiveness, conspiracy theorists, flat earthers, and science deniers. If we use this guide to immorality, otherwise known as the Bible, to build our societies, women would not have autonomy over their own bodies. They would not be seen as equal authorities in the home. Members of the LGBTQ community would be shunned. People in need of healthcare would be denied in many cases. Foreigners would be enslaved and treated as unequal, and we would literally be throwing rocks at disobedient children. And let's not forget what we've seen tonight. What we've learned is that people like Jill would be in your home telling you who you can sleep with, when you can sleep with them, and how much you can drink. The very thing my opponent is arguing for is a seed that has grown into a weed called Christian nationalist ideology, which is the thing that will choke out the virtues of freedom, equality, and justice for all. And I think I'll go ahead and give it the rest of my time. Thank the audience for being here.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me bring Jill up here. Thank y'all. Thank both of you. I got just a few questions. There's not very many, so I'll let y'all just both kind of answer. I think there's three is all I got, so that shouldn't be too bad. Um, I'm gonna ask Big Bad Mama had one person. I didn't write it down, so I'm gonna go ahead and read it before it gets out of the way. And Jill, it's probably directed to you, but it
Okay.
says
Do you
how
mind if
many
we both?
miss.
Do you mind if we both address each question?
Yeah, you can. You can.
Yeah, just
You
that way
can.
it's fair for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna let y'all, but Big Bad Mama though did point it out to Jill. So I'll let him answer it first. Jill, how
Yeah.
many missed opportunities were there for an omniscient God to say clearly and unequivocally that all slavery was bad, that women should be treated like people and not property?
Well, he did several places. Exodus 21:16 comes to mind. It teaches that basically slave trafficking, what we would call slave trafficking, kidnapping, and forcing into an industry or selling. And even the Bible even says, even if you had already sold that slave, after you kidnapped them, even if you had already sold them, meaning they're no longer in your possession, you were still put to death. So the Bible takes chattel slavery very, very seriously. The problem is when the atheist goes to read the Bible, he sees that the word slavery is also used in other contexts, but he ignores the context, and instead he says, "Oh, well, this must be the case. Chattel slavery must be the case here because it says Yvette." But again, Ibrahim, the Eved of Abraham, or Eleazar was his name actually, the slave of Abraham, would have inherited all of Abraham's wealth, born in the household of Abraham. So we have actual case studies. They don't. They have nothing. They have nothing but the word says slave. That's the word says purchase. That's all they have. They have zero case studies of a taskmaster from Israel rounding up people, forcing them into some sort of servitude. Zero.
All right, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Oe.
Yeah, the verse that he cited does in fact say, it's verse 16, chapter 21, whoever kidnaps a person, whether that person has been sold or is still held in possession, shall be put to death. So what they're talking about doing is stealing somebody else's property. It doesn't have an issue with the person that has been sold or the fact that they could be held in possession. No, it's stealing somebody else's property. And coincidentally, the verse before that, 15, and the verse after that talk about how you can get away with killing your children if they're disobedient or strike. Whoever strikes a father or mother shall be put to death. Whoever curses father or mother shall be put to death.
I told you so. That's all they
Okay,
have is
so
property, the word. Told you.
all I can say is if I ever struck mom, I probably would have been put to death. I can vouch for probably that would have happened. Yeah, yeah. Not that it's not just saying that that's the way I was raised by a woman who believed in the Bible too. So yeah, but she managed not to kill me though. But I didn't ever hit her either. So okay, we have two more questions. Jacqueline, and she said that this wasn't really. She said, and this wasn't pointed towards anybody. Just trying to bring it up. Is sacrificing our children to war? Does that go along with biblical morality? Oh, you want to
Um,
answer that first, or do you, Gio?
Yeah,
Did you
I
want to go
can't
first?
think now sacrificing our children to war. The Bible does specifically say in times when soldiers should go into war and do things like I when I mentioned Saul and the Israelites example with the Amalekites, but I'm not sure if it says anything about sacrificing children to war. It says you can kill children in war. It justifies that, like again with the Amalekite situation. But I think that in general, war itself is immoral. So objectively immoral. So we could just start there and have a as a principle. and the children, whether they get put into war or not, would become irrelevant.
I actually had a
JiL.
debate with Mark. Yeah, I actually had a debate with Mark Reed on whether or not war was immoral. It's like a mini debate, but war is not always immoral. Okay, according to the Bible, sometimes you must go out and defend yourself. Sometimes you must go out and stop regimes who are actually killing children systematically, and you are to take them out of power. Um, so when you're reading the Bible, you have to understand context and what is going on. So it's dishonest to read the Geneva Convention and say, look at how America treats people. I would never be an American. Well, that's the Geneva Convention. That is, those are laws concerning war. So you don't take laws concerning warfare and how you treat people in warfare. It's very harsh. It's war. It's a reality. Okay, people are captured. They're put in transport vehicles. They're taken against their will to places they don't want to go because they're survivors. Okay, they're women and children more than likely. Okay, so that's the reality of war. But it's dishonest, and I would even say a bit anti-Semitic, to go to a Hebrew culture when they speak about how to treat survivors of war and suggest that they are practicing chattel slavery, which is what Dr. Josh tried to do, by the way.
I don't think that's what I think Jacqueline was just making more of like a statement about today's ongoing war. So I would say, yeah. Okay. Did you answer OE? You did, didn't you? I'm my brain's dead. Okay, and Bro Joe wanted to know why scholarship is better than liberal scholarship, Jill.
Oh, that's an easy one. Conservative scholars typically approach the Bible in a different way, in that they look internally instead of outwardly, inward. So you can look at, for instance, what the Bible says about the surrounding nations. It says that when you go into these lands, they're practicing similar things that you are, but learn not the way of the heathen, meaning, yet they have slavery too, but they have chattel slavery, meaning the people are being kidnapped and forced into servitude in a civil manner. This is how they work. This is how their culture worked. Um, and the Midianites were very popular for this. They would roam the countryside, kidnapping children, sort of like Boko Haram does. Okay, that type of behavior was forbidden in the land of Israel, although they had eveds. So they didn't destroy the economic system by saying no more eveds. They simply said, yes, you can be an eved if you want to be, if you love your master and you want to dedicate yourself to this household, you want to be a part of the tribe of Israel, you would join the tribe of Israel. You would take an oath, a blood oath, a suzerain vassal covenant, it was called, with the master, and you would join his tribe or his household. That was an Aved. So if you're going to take that, which again, Mr. OE has not done tonight, he has not demonstrated one iota of evidence that anything that was going on in the ancient Near East would have been considered illegal today, as far as the Eved is concerned. And we have case studies. We have Ibrahim. We have Ibrahim's slave. What does he have? The fact that Ibrahim was a property of Abraham? So what? Make me the property
Okay.
of Bill Gates tomorrow. I'll sign up. Bill Gates, where are you? I'll sign up to
You
be your
need,
property.
well, you got to come over to the liberal side. That's where Bill Gates
well,
checks
well, he's
go.
got the money,
Remember?
so money doesn't
Yeah,
take
yeah, yeah,
doesn't
yeah. I
care.
know.
Money
You
doesn't
got,
care about politics.
yeah, yeah.
Sign me up.
Check. You got to join. You got to be a liberal. You got to be liberal.
Right. The point is, it's
Okay,
voluntary
we
work. That's the point.
you got off the
I think Jill's
scholarship thing
still.
though.
I think Jill's still giving his.
That's why. Well, that's why I interrupted him. He kind of got off the scholarship. He was re-arguing
Oh,
his position again.
okay. I don't
Which,
care how
yeah,
long he wants to take to answer these questions. I think if you've only got a few of them, we can just give his
yeah.
whatever kind of answer. I would say that scholar CJ Cornwaite actually addresses this really well, and I recommend checking out his channel, PhD scholar. And he's absolutely right that the term conservative scholar is actually something that apologists have come up with fairly recently, and it's an attempt to poison the well to make it seem like there's this critical scholarship that's shouldn't be trusted, and then there's the conservative scholarship that's can be trusted because they're more conservative, whereas a critical scholarship is always looking for something wrong or whatever. It's just poisoning the well. There's only scholarship. You either have it or you don't. What you need to do is look at beyond the credentials at the actual argument, which is what happened in tonight's debate. Is that JiL was constantly saying this scholar, but he didn't cite a single journal, no peer-reviewed work, no papers, no actual citations other than the little graphic he showed with two specific studies. Everything else was just an appeal to authority. Whereas what I did is I cited the scholar, the journal or the book, the article, the page number, the date. Then I applied the argument they made to the scripture itself. So that's how you make an argument using scholarship. The problem with biblical scholarship in general is that every single accredited seminary in the US and most of them worldwide require what's called a statement of faith. This is a fact. The statement of faith is a contract. It's a document. It's a contractual document that you sign with the seminary that says you will affirm X, Y, and Z. And they're all different depending on is it a dispensationalist seminary? Is it a Baptist seminary? So Catholic seminary, so on and so forth. So every seminary is going to, just depending on what the denomination is, have differences in their statement of faith. Many of them, as you know, Trinitarian model is the most popular model in Christianity. So they'll all include some kind of thing saying you will affirm the Trinity, for example. So this is a very disingenuous process, which is why most historians, right, actual scholars in history, scholars that I mentioned, will look at the conclusions that these scholars are coming to with skepticism, because if you're already going to say that you believe something before you even been educated in what it is, chances of you getting a non-biased, actual good information is obviously statistically unlikely, if not impossible.
Oh.
So you need to look at the source itself. Just saying scholar doesn't do anything for the argument whatsoever. There is no such thing as conservative scholar or critical scholar, so on and so forth.
All right, thank y'all. Thank y'all very much. That was the last question. I've got another question, but I asked him because I wanted to end this one at like 9 and start the other one. So, um, JiL, you and OE
Any more
both are
questions?
welcome to. No, well, there's one more. That do you want to answer it right
Oh
now?
my,
It
there'd
was.
be a ton of questions.
That's a good question.
I figured there'd be a ton too, but there's not, unless I just missed a bunch of them. But I didn't have anybody writing them down for me. But I looked through, I didn't
Put
see
those
it.
questions in the chat.
Um, Brojo, Gen X John asked, "How is punishing innocent people moral? Example: flood, the sins of the punished on their children."
Yeah, the Bible doesn't teach the sins of the father are punished. That passage was speaking specifically about one child, one son, Canaan. So oftentimes we just need to take some courses, biblical studies or courses in hermeneutics. There are so many errors, biblically illiterate errors that were made tonight that I don't really have the time or even feel the need to correct them all. But when you talk about scholarship, I did cite the entire Oriental Seminar, who again, about 10 to 15 scholars, including Meredith Klein, came to convene on this matter, and Dr. Josh wasn't invited. Neither was any liberal scholar. They simply don't qualify. And there are, and the difference is, a distinction is, Skylar, again, the approach they take. They are reading the Bible about, for instance, slavery. They're taking the Bible and saying, well, look, this is how slavery was done in the ancient Near East. Therefore, forget about what it says internally. Therefore, this must have been what they were practicing here. So instead of a more conservative perspective would say, let's read the actual Hebrew writings and take their word for it. If they say you were put to death for doing that, then let's take their word for it. And let's not assume that they made this up, or maybe someone then posed this later, interpolation later, maybe. Let's not assume any wild conspiracy theories. That's mainly what you get from critical scholarship. It's wild conspiracy. What did Jesus do when he was 12? Where, did he go to India? He might have went to India. Some suggest, that's what you get from the sensationalism, sophistry, and basically taking advantage of people like OE.
Well, do you think it would be better like on the Old Testament things to go to the Jewish scholars because they're more maybe aware of like the traditions of the time or the um, would you think they would be
Jewish scholars
like
back then, yes, the Jewish scholars back then
well
would
I mean
be
I don't think there's
the
probably no
Apostle
Jewish
Paul.
scholars that were back then that's still alive anymore. I'm saying let's say
Well, the Apostle Paul
even those
wrote.
900-year-old people wouldn't have made it this long. I don't think.
The Apostle Paul was, according to historians, was um, a major part of that society as far as the Jews are concerned. He was sitting on the seat, one of the highest seats in that religious circle, the Sanhedrin. It was called the Sanhedrin Council. So
Hmm.
doesn't get any more top Jew than Paul,
Yeah, but
top scholar.
he denounced. I mean, like he gave up Judaism for Christianity, right? Like,
That's right. Yeah.
okay, okay. Um,
Well, it wasn't called
you,
Judaism, but
you want to answer that question, and then
Yeah,
we'll go to the
I
actual
just want to make
one.
sure. I was just reading through the chat to see if there were any questions that might have got missed for you, just to help you out here. And it looks like, are we on the question about punishing the children for the sins of the father? Is that where we're at?
Yes.
Yeah, that is a big problem, and that's one of the many things that gets overlooked when I talk to Christians about, well, and I never got into it in this debate. It was one of my questions I wanted to ask during the cross examination, but we didn't get there, unfortunately. But when it comes to Christians, I often ask them, well, because I'll try to run away from the Old Testament for good reasons, in their own ways. JiL had his own creative way of doing it tonight by hand waving it away and reinterpreting words that property doesn't mean property, slave doesn't mean slave, seizing somebody means a consensual action, which is just JiL's way of interpreting it, which is his right to do that. But what they will often do, another way they try to run away from the Old Testament, is by saying, oh, well, Christians only follow the 10 Commandments. Well, in the 10 Commandments, the commandment of not worshiping false idols, if you actually read the rest of that, right, it says, because I am the Lord your God, am a jealous God, and I will punish the iniquities of the children of the father to the third and fourth generation, right? Which tells you that this God of the Bible is perfectly fine with punishing people for sins they didn't actually commit. It's the father's sin, it's the it's a grandfather's sin, and even the great grandfather's sin that the child is being punished with. You don't have to go all the way to Exodus to get this narrative, because we already know from the get-go that we're all being punished allegedly because the naked woman ate the magic fruit because the talking snake told her to do it, or some kind of crazy shit like that. But whatever it is, this passing off the punishment is just par for the course, and it starts in Genesis and it goes all the way through to Revelation.
yeah,
All
this
right.
passage is
Thank you.
speaking about generational consequences, not curses. So visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children have to deal with uh, not moral guilt for the parents' sin, but basically collectively the sins would spread throughout the household and societies. That's what it's speaking of there. So again, this is just another case of biblical illiteracy.
Okay.
Scholar, you should know
Big
that.
Bad
You're a former
Mama.
pastor.
Yeah, y'all can. Yeah. Big Bad Mama said to tell y'all that it was a great debate. So both of you. And I wanted to tell you, Jill. I don't know if you noticed it or not. Dr. Kip came by, wished you well while you were doing like one of your statements while he was here. And Spooky said that this is one of the top 5 debates ever on YouTube. So y'all have impressed Spooky a whole lot. So and thank y'all for coming. Thank you.
Spooky's got the best. Spooky's got the. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Spooky's got the best name on YouTube. Spooky Bed Hair. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yes, Bed Harrian. Yes. Yes. So anybody can come to the actually I have 10 spots on the panel. That's all I can hold, 9 plus me. So
Oh, it's the after
if
show.
it gets full, yeah, I think I see.
I'm definitely
I'm gonna shut this. You're what?
No, so I'm definitely interested in trying to answer to some of OE's issues
Okay. Yes. Y'all can
with
battle it out on. So
grade.
I'm gonna start a
Did
new
you put the
stream
link?
for it though.
Did you put the link?
I put
Oh,
if
okay,
y'all look
okay.
at. Do you know where the private chat is? Do y'all know where the private chat is?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like if you go look at the private chat, the link should be in there for this for the after show.
Okay.
I think I sent you
And
one too on.
OE, have your
Go ahead.
Bible app ready. Okay, we're going to be looking at those verses you brought up. Okay, we're going to have a little Bible study. Is
Sounds
that
like a
okay with
winner.
you?
Sounds like a winner. I'll be looking forward to you educating us all on what the Bible actually
Yes,
says.
Yes,
yes,
sounds
and
fun.
yeah.
And thank y'all. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Objective Ethics. Thank y'all. Like it's been great. Y'all have both been awesome, and I appreciate so much y'all doing this on my channel. So, and we'll be right back on, y'all.
Thank you for hosting,
We're gonna
sister.
start a new stream. So just give me a few minutes, then we'll be back right back. Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.